it's another game in which Manchester United have not won. And Jose Mourinho said, it's not a point for us, but a point for them. Is he right?
I think he's got one point, but I think his agenda there probably is to raise up his own team, to paint United as these really difficult big opponents, and therefore their performance will, I think, stand the test in the eyes of the fans, because he's been under scrutiny, hasn't he, for Fenerbahce fans. They're not been in great form in the league so far, so I think he came in with a certain mindset to make sure that he was going to come away from this game with his reputation enhanced and solidified. In the press conference afterwards, he was taking issue with some of the Turkish press that were suggesting that it wasn't the best performance. But I do think that United will look at this performance result with in isolation. It's fine. 1 point away in Fenerbahce, a difficult place to come against a Jose Mourinho team where the dramatics were all there, weren't they? He's getting sent off in the second half, but the fact that it's the third Europa League draw in a row is the issue, and it comes in a context of a difficult season, across the board.
In terms of the game, Angelina, we saw before the game murmurings coming out about Nazir Mazraoui starting in the number 10.
Minds, let's be honest.
We all lost our minds and said, no, it's got to be a typo.
Dropped.
Yeah, that's UEFA's got that wrong. People on social media, the Indian account saying it's definitely happening. It did happen. He has a part in the first goal, but after that, not much in terms of creating. And Erik ten Hag's reason for starting him there, sort of saying he can manage the atmosphere, etc., etc. Was that a disaster to play him there?
I don't think it was as big of a disaster as I was expecting, but I just was confused by the whole thing, because he's a player that has played in that position, I think, a couple of times, maybe when he was at Ajax with Erik ten Hag. But this also makes me question, how much faith does he have in Joshua Zirkzee? I mean, he did not have a good game. He had that good pass, with the goal, but he wasn't great. He looks like he's lacking in some serious confidence when he's playing that ball through. I mean, I know, Crookie, you definitely saw it, when Garnacho was screaming for the ball and he just didn't pass it to him, and he was so frustrated. But we're told that Zirkzee can play in that number 10 role. I was thinking without Bruno Fernandes, maybe we would see that. Maybe we'd see him a little bit more comfortable. Maybe this could be a position he could play in. So that confused me. If you're not using Zirkzee, who's your new signing who can play in that position, you'd think Christian Eriksen, who can play in that position. So the whole thing was quite strange for me, I'll be honest. And I also found, I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto it as well, but the substitutions, the Antony situation, I have a feeling that Crookie's going to want a little rant on Antony. That whole situation, the fact that we have not seen Amad Diallo properly since the Porto game, the team selection, the substitutions at the moment are baffling me a bit. Yeah,
it is one to think about. Crookie, you look at Amad as well, not starting in the 10. He looked furious when he came on. You saw Rene Haka and Ruud van Nistelrooy sort of trying to G him up to say, listen, we know we put Antony on instead of you a few minutes ago, but we do believe in you now.
I get it though. Why yeah. would you want to get excited when someone like Antony, the only thing I'm thinking is it a situation where Ten Hag has realised he's got to sell him maybe, and he's thinking, right, get him a bit of game time, see how he looks, see if we can ship him off, in January. That's the only logical reason as to why you started Antony instead of Diallo. But he also said, didn't he, post-match, about how Antony's been training really well, and then said Amad's had some good moments. That, for me, filled me with dread. I'm thinking, if we got Sancho 2.0 is this him trying to throw a bit of shade? Maybe I'm just reading into it a little bit too much. But I struggle to see why Antony's starting over.
I don't think it'll be an attitude thing. One thing you definitely can't label at Amad, he's such a humble, quiet kid. If anything, we want him to be a little bit more boastful, a little bit more confident in himself. But if you're him, you must be absolutely fuming. And Antony comes on, gets injured. We saw him walking out on crutches and a protective boot as well.
I think it's quite weak management from Ten Hag, picking on the guy that isn't going to kick off in the dressing room. But I think it was quite sad to see to see Amad in that state. I mean, as you say, there's videos going around of him being given instructions. He's not listening. Yeah. He's so angry, that he's not started the game, and Mazraoui's played in the number 10, where Amad actually has played to good effect previously at his other clubs. Then when they do make a change, on comes Antony instead. So his head's all over the place at the moment, but really that sort of epitomises the muddled thinking of Erik ten Hag. This is a manager who seems to have no awareness of the fact that his head should be on the chopping block, because when you come to a place like Fenerbahce needing a result, you pick your best team. You don't start experimenting with a guy who I think's played 9 minutes as a number 10 previously in his career. You can call it a bold move. I call it foolhardy. If you don't get a result, and a draw probably isn't enough, then it's going to be used as a stick to beat you with. I think Højlund should have started. He's still playing his way back to fitness and confidence, and looked a lot more effective at the top end of the pitch than Xerxes did when he came off the bench. So it sums up the muddled thinking of Erik ten Hag. And Laurie's right. A point away from home in a hostile atmosphere on its own is not a bad result, but it continues that dreadful European run. No win in more than a year now. It was a year today, yesterday, that United snuck past Copenhagen, and I asked Erik ten Hag about that European record in the press conference on Wednesday, and again he brushed it aside. It's not a problem. First season we won some games in Europe. Last season was difficult. Did he mention how he's won trophies? We'll be back. Oh, he compared himself to Jose Mourinho.
That was too much. Do we all agree that was too much?
Absolutely. As soon as we walked out of the presser, we were walking, weren't we, to go get a cab, and I went, Crookie, did you realise that, like, Eric just, like, without anybody realising, just basically compared himself to Jose Mourinho and was like, we got loads in common. And look, listen, you got to back yourself, Laurie. You do have to back yourself. But some people have suggested, you know, is it borderline arrogance / delusion, or is it just overconfidence, or is he just playing the game?
Aren't all managers a little bit delusional, a little bit crazy? The best managers, and I'm not, necessarily putting Erik ten Hag in that bracket of Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, but and I think he actually sort of said recent years, right? And then he probably realised Jose hasn't actually won trophies recently. So I don't know if that was part of it, but they seem to be both, a bit of a loving right between them. I think Jose's thinking, well, that's part of his modus operandi, isn't it, to kind of not patronise, but
he's humouring him, isn't he?
He's humouring him a bit, yeah. But I do genuinely think there's an element to him where he knows how difficult it is at Manchester United. He said that his second place behind Man City was his best achievement in management, and obviously now he's trying to get the winner's medal and the bonus, isn't he, from that, if the charges are brought forward. But so I do think there's a genuine sort of sense from Mourinho on ten Hag in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, I think ten Hag has been scrutinised ever since he walked through the door at United. He lost the first 2 games of his tenure, had to change up his tactics, become pragmatic in that way. And so he's adopted this kind of shield against all criticism where he has to be a strong character, because otherwise the players will undermine him and he'll lose that authority. Now, obviously, does it slip into a case of being too straight about your view on football and how you are going to be with the players, and that then causes a little bit of a disconnect with them? I don't know. I think he's tried to soften that a little bit, but at the same time, when you're getting these kind of issues coming up where players are clearly frustrated, he's going to have to manage that very delicately.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Andre Onana, because he made 2 massive saves to keep it at 1-0 to us. He's found his feet, and actually
he's been excellent this season.
He has. Is he keeping Erik ten Hag in the job?
Yeah, potentially, because there was that double save at Palace the other week as well. And I mean, last night you and I were thinking alike, actually, because you compared it to that Schmeichel save against Rapid Vienna, which actually I saw yesterday. I don't know why, it was on television.
The same year as when Fenerbahce beat United at Old Trafford for the first time in European competition. So it's the same group.
I mean, it was that was a worldie save, and arguably this is even better because it's a double save, and if Fenerbahce score at that point, it could turn ugly for Manchester United. So I think Onana is one of the few players actually who's coming out this season with any great credit. And I think he cares as well. We're going to hear from him in a bit. We spoke to him in the mix zone. He didn't want to take the plaudits for that save because he said, well, ultimately we've dropped more points. But there are not enough players who care. Martinez had the captain's armband, I'm told, and Laurie will back it up. He's a real big influence in the dressing room, but I'm not sure that he showed that enough on the pitch last night. Garnacho cares. When Anthony was down, injured, when actually he could have just dragged himself off the pitch rather than delaying the play and breaking up United's momentum. He was fuming at that as well as watching Garnacho. He wanted him to get off the pitch as much as I did.
And then he went over to Anthony and said, oh, you're right. I hope you're good.
Let me just mask over this.
But I want to see more of that from the players, because there's too many players in this team now, and it's become a bit of a, endemic, really. They're just used to not winning matches, and they accept not winning matches. Manchester United are 21st in Europe's second competition. And you look at the teams they've failed to beat in the last year. I said the dog and duck last night. I was a bit emotional. But I stand by it. This is not a good Fenerbahce team. The fans want Mourinho sacked.